Hello and welcome to NTD News Today. Kevin Hogan here. Let's take a look at our top stories. Condo collapse searchers collecting personal items from the rubble. They hope to reunite them with family members, and a U.S. fighting champion raises money for the victims. Vice President Kamala Harris has announced the Democratic National Committee will invest $25 million into expanding voting rights. This comes as the Republican National Committee attempts to intervene in the Biden administration's lawsuit against the election reform law in Georgia. The White House had to clarify comments President Biden made earlier this week about going door to door to get more Americans vaccinated. The remarks set off a firestorm of protest from Republican lawmakers, saying the tactic is intrusive and raises privacy concerns. Haitian police say their president was killed by foreigners. A group of suspects consists of Colombians and Haitian Americans, but the U.S. has not confirmed their citizenship. The condo collapse death toll is now 64. It's expected to rise to 140. Yesterday marked 2 weeks since the collapse. Some family members were allowed to visit the site for a moment of silence. NTD's Jessica Beatty has more.
The death toll after the condo collapse in Surfside, Florida reached 64 Thursday, and 76 are still unaccounted for. Miami-Dade's mayor said they brought some family members to the site for a visit.
We held a moment of silence with our first responders. They paused their work on the pile briefly to honor the victims and their families, and they received an aerial salute.
Rescue workers now focusing on finding remains instead of survivors. The mayor says they're also looking for special personal items in the rubble. One local religious leader said any items found would be a blessing for family members.
That would bring a little bit of hope and kind of a something for them to remember and something for them to hold on to.
And former Oklahoma City Fire Chief Gary Mars knows what the search teams are going through. He helped with search efforts back in 1995 after the Oklahoma City bombing.
We got down to where we had very few missing at that point. We had been documenting of course, the people that were coming out and how many were left unaccounted for.
For those teams in Florida, a similar task lies ahead.
I'm sure that they are have taken every caution that they can take. When you get to the point that you believe there's no more areas voided big enough to sustain that life, then that's when you start considering to do those, make those kind of decisions.
And American judo champion turned MMA fighter Kayla Harrison is raising money for victims of the collapse. She announced the news the day after it happened.
A building just collapsed in Miami. Later on tonight, I'm going to put up a link tree in my Instagram. I encourage you guys to go and donate to the survivors. It's a little bit of a tragedy here in our own country.
She lives just 35 miles away from the building. Fox News reports she's donated $5,000 herself. And donations to her charity, the Fearless Foundation, will be given to 2 charities supporting Surfside victims. Jessica Beatty, NTD News.
And our reporters are on the ground at this year's Conservative Political Action Conference in Dallas, Texas. Let's hear from NTD's Jason Perry, who's there now. Jason, what's happening out there?
Thanks, Kevin. Hundreds of conservative organizations and speakers will be here in Dallas, Texas throughout the weekend. This year's CPAC 2021 will be focused on America Uncanceled because there is a general feeling that conservative voices are being censored in the mainstream media and big tech. So conservatives have gathered here to share their ideas and plan for the future. NTD's Steve Lance spoke with former White House Director of Strategic Communications, Mercedes Schlapp, to find out more of what the event will entail.
There has been obviously, I think, a sense of uncertainty, a sense of, I would say, even fear of watching America kind of crumble in a way that is, I think, that people are very concerned about. And so this is an opportunity for conservatives to come together and really, get trained, get the facts, take it back to their communities, and make sure that they get involved and stay active to be able to stop the leftist agenda.
The speakers will begin at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Please be sure to tune in to NTD to watch our live coverage. Back to you, Kevin.
VP Harris announces that the DNC is investing $25 million into a voting rights campaign. It's called I Will Vote. That's while Republican committees try to intervene in the Justice Department's lawsuit challenging the election law in Georgia. The $25 million DNC voting rights campaign will invest in registering, educating, and turning out voters. That's according to VP Harris.
Your vote matters. Your voice matters. Your will matters. Your desire for yourself and your families matters.
This comes as many states have introduced or passed laws that secure voting systems from fraud. Democrats assert every vote should count, while Republicans say only lawfully cast votes should count. What's more, unsatisfied civil rights leaders have taken their complaints directly to the president. That's while his administration announced the new push to expand voting access. They said their talk with Biden was encouraging, but they want Congress to enact voting reform.
Time is of the essence. This needs to be done this summer while the Senate and the House are still in session, and that we are encouraging the Senate to stay in session until such efforts are completed, because that is the serious nature that we face.
Senate Republicans blocked a Democrat-backed election reform bill via filibuster in late June. Also, 2 Republican committees are intervening in the Justice Department's lawsuit that challenges Georgia's election integrity law. The Biden administration's lawsuit alleges that parts of the Georgia election integrity law discriminate against voters based on their race, and that it intentionally seeks to suppress black voter turnout. RNC Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel says Joe Biden and Democrats are weaponizing the Justice Department by trying to strong-arm the state of Georgia into making its elections less secure. On July 1st, the Supreme Court upheld Arizona's ban on ballot harvesting. This was a win for Republicans. McDaniel describes the DOJ's lawsuit as incredibly weak and says she expects Republicans to win this case as well. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki clarified that the federal government is not keeping a database of which Americans have been vaccinated. She made the clarification after President Biden announced a controversial effort to get more Americans to take the CCP virus or coronavirus vaccine. NTD's Colin Fredrickson has the story.
President Biden announced plans earlier this week to get more Americans vaccinated by going door to door. That brought on backlash from Republicans, saying it's intrusive and violates people's privacy. Republican Congressman Jody Hice tweeted, "President Biden wants to send people to knock on your door to bully you into taking an optional vaccine. Anyone who wants a vaccine is able to get one. Leave everyone else alone." Other Republicans had similar reactions. Comments from Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra added fuel to the firestorm when he told CNN that the government absolutely has the right to know who's been vaccinated. Arizona Attorney General Mark Brnovich wrote a letter to the White House expressing concern. He says it would be inappropriate for the government to use private medical information to knock on the doors of unvaccinated Americans. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki clarified the plan to reporters on Thursday. She says the government isn't tracking who's been vaccinated.
The federal government does not have a database of who's been vaccinated. That is not our role. We don't maintain a database along those lines, and we have no plans to.
And Becerra Thursday defended his statement on Twitter, saying, "Some comments I made today are being taken wildly out of context. To be clear, government has no database tracking who is vaccinated." Psaki says the people going door to door won't work for the government.
And so these are grassroots voices across the country. They are not members of the government. They are not federal government employees.
The Biden administration announced new efforts to increase vaccination rates after they failed to meet their goal of having 70% of American adults vaccinated by July 4th. The percentage of vaccinated American adults currently stands at 67%. Colin Fredrickson, NTD News.
The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Food and Drug Administration released a joint statement late Thursday saying Americans who have been fully vaccinated against the CCP virus do not need a booster shot at this time.
Pfizer said on Thursday that it will ask U.S. regulators to authorize a third booster shot of its COVID-19 vaccine within the next month, based on evidence of greater risk of reinfection 6 months after inoculation and the fast-spreading Delta variant. Pfizer's chief scientific officer, Mikhail Dolston, said a recently reported dip in the vaccine's effectiveness in Israel was mostly due to infections in people who had been vaccinated in January or February. Pfizer did not release the full set of Israeli data on Thursday, but said it would be published soon. But Pfizer stressed that data from Israel and Britain suggests that even with waning antibody levels, the vaccine remains around 95% effective against severe disease. Dolston said that early data from the company's own studies shows that a third booster dose generates antibody levels that are 5 to 10-fold higher than after the second dose, suggesting that a third dose will offer promising protection. He said that multiple countries in Europe and elsewhere have already approached Pfizer to discuss booster doses, and that some may begin administering them before a potential U.S. authorization. Meanwhile, U.S. regulators said late on Thursday that Americans who have been fully vaccinated do not need a booster COVID-19 shot at this time, writing, quote, "We are prepared for booster doses if and when the science demonstrates that they are needed."
Wells Fargo has angered many customers by shutting down one of its popular credit products. The bank notified customers who use its personal lines of credit that no more money is available to them. People who use that credit offering could borrow up to $100,000 for things like home repairs or to consolidate credit card debt. In a notice to consumers about the closure, Wells Fargo warned it could impact their credit scores. That gained the attention of Senator Elizabeth Warren, who slammed the decision on Twitter and called the bank incompetent. She was also a key figure when Wells Fargo admitted to opening millions of fake accounts, and in 2017 publicly told the bank's CEO he should be fired. A Wells Fargo spokesman says customers who previously used its personal lines of credit should now use credit cards and personal loans instead. President Biden is promising to end $90 billion worth of tax breaks for the fossil fuel industry. The extra revenue would fund some of his Build Back Better plan, and it would also likely increase gas prices.
President Biden emphasized a tax increase on energy firms to fund part of his American Families Plan at a speech in Crystal Lake, Illinois, Wednesday.
If we end tax breaks for fossil fuels and make polluters pay to clean up the messes they've made, that would raise $90 billion. I'm not asking them to do anything that is unfair.
Biden's announcement comes as the nation's average gas prices surge. As the economy recovers, demand grows, and supply strives to keep up. Energy companies have opposed Biden's tax proposals since they were introduced. According to The Hill, American Petroleum Institute President Mike Summers says increased tax on American energy will only undermine economic recovery and job creation, push natural gas and oil investments overseas, and lead to less government revenue, not more. Democrats are hoping to pass Biden's American Families Plan and part of his jobs plan through a reconciliation process in the Senate. Republicans have vowed to stop it. To fund his plans, Biden wants to increase taxes on big corporations and wealthy Americans and implement tighter IRS enforcement.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband bet millions of dollars on big tech companies before a House committee's vote on antitrust legislation. The transactions were disclosed in a filing last week. Here are the details.
In the weeks leading up to the House Judiciary Committee's vote on bills aimed at reining in the powers of big tech, Speaker Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi, placed a bet of up to $6 million on Google parent company Alphabet, Apple, and Amazon. And he won big. The trade on Alphabet netted him a $4.8 million gain, and with the share price jumping, it's since risen to $5.3 million. Speaker Pelosi signed a financial disclosure for the transactions on July 2nd. Her husband's transaction was completed just 1 week before the committee advanced the 6 antitrust bills on June 11th. 4 bills took aim at 3 of the companies Paul bet on. Alphabet owned Google, Amazon, and Apple. There was little market reaction at the time, suggesting investors don't see the House proposals as a real threat to the tech giants. In fact, since the legislation was approved, Alphabet's share price has increased by 3.2%. Speaker Pelosi's spokesman told Bloomberg Wednesday that the Speaker has no involvement or prior knowledge of these transactions, adding that she doesn't own any stock. Paul's transactions are not suspected of violating any laws relating to members of Congress, their spouses, and insider trading. The transactions would only violate the Stock Act if he acted on non-public information. This isn't the first time Speaker Pelosi's husband has made investments in close proximity to the happenings in Congress. In March, he purchased millions of dollars worth of Microsoft shares less than 2 weeks before the company secured a $2.2 billion contract with the U.S. government. And in January, he bet up to $1 million on the future of Tesla before the Biden administration delivered plans to provide incentives promoting the shift toward electric vehicles. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
The National Rifle Association is appealing a Florida law that bans people under 21 from purchasing firearms. An NRA spokesperson says the law violates the constitutional rights of young adults. The law was created after a mass shooting at a Florida high school that left 17 people dead. It bars 18 to 20-year-olds from purchasing guns, but not from owning them. Chief U.S. District Judge Mark Walker upheld the Florida law, but he noted some inconsistencies. In his order, he asks, why should the 20-year-old single mother living on her own be unable to obtain a firearm for self-defense when a 20-year-old living with their parents can easily obtain one? Attorneys defending the law say young adults are a high-risk group because they're more impulsive. The NRA's petition says the U.S. considers 18-year-olds adults for almost all purposes, and that law-abiding adults should be able to exercise constitutional rights. The founder of Utah Black Lives Matter claims the American flag is a symbol of hatred and racism. She says people who fly the flag are racist and might be dangerous.
Lex Scott founded the Utah chapter of Black Lives Matter. She wrote a Facebook post blasting people who fly the American flag. She says, "When we see this flag, we know the person flying it is a racist. When we see this flag, we know that the person flying it lives in a different America than we do. When we see this flag, we question your intelligence." She says the American flag is a symbol of hatred. Civil rights attorney Leo Terrell tells Fox's Sean Hannity that he's glad Scott made the post because it shows that BLM is racist and out of touch with Black Americans.
And I'm sick of organizations like Black Lives Matter or Al Sharpton trying to speak for Black Americans. The 99.9% of Black Americans support the flag, love this country, and do not associate with Black Lives Matter Utah.
After her post was widely criticized, Scott says she stands by it. She says she feels fear when she sees someone with an American flag. The national BLM movement is based on the premise that America is systemically racist. BLM co-founder Patrice Cullors says she and another BLM co-founder are trained Marxist organizers. The popularity of BLM plummeted after widespread anti-police protests devolved into violence and riots last summer. Scott says her chapter is independent from the national BLM network and they don't support violence. She tells the Salt Lake Tribune she made the post partly to make people feel uncomfortable.
A Washington, D.C. church was awarded $220,000. That's after it filed a federal lawsuit challenging the district's restrictions on gatherings at places of worship during the pandemic. Leaders of the Capitol Hill Baptist Church appealed to D.C. officials, voicing their opposition to the mayor's ban on all indoor and outdoor church meetings of 100 people or more. A preliminary injunction in October allowed the congregation to resume worship services outdoors, and the settlement signed July 8th blocks any future pandemic measures that would be more restrictive than those on non-religious activities. The district also agreed to pay the church's legal fees. The Supreme Court has already struck down several bans on religious gatherings since the pandemic began. Authorities say the Commando unit that assassinated the Haitian president this week comprised Colombians and Haitian Americans. That's as the hunt goes on for the masterminds of the brazen killing.
In Haiti, a group of handcuffed men were paraded before the media on Thursday. Suspects, police said, in the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse. Authorities called them a commando unit, trained and heavily armed, and said they were all foreigners, including 26 Colombians and 2 Haitian Americans. Also on display, assault rifles, machetes, bolt cutters, and Colombian passports. Police held the press event following a raid on a house near the scene of the crime. They said 3 suspects have been killed, with 8 still on the run. Moïse was fatally shot at his home Wednesday. A massive blow for a country already struggling with crushing poverty, political chaos, and gang violence. Colombia's defense minister said there was preliminary evidence that the Colombian suspects were retired military.
The national government, our police and army have given instructions for immediate collaboration. The complete cooperation of our forces is with our fellow Republic of Haiti.
Authorities have identified the American suspects, but the U.S. State Department has not confirmed they are citizens. Haiti's police claim the local community helped track down the suspected killers, but have called for residents not to take justice into their own hands after a violent crowd gathered at the Port-au-Prince police station where the suspects were being held.
Flash floods sweep through New York City, flooding train stations, submerging roads, and drenching residents. Find out more when we return. Severe weather and flooding hit New York City area as remnants of Elsa threatened to pummel the tri-state region of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. The National Weather Service issued flash flood warnings for parts of New York City, as well as nearby Nassau County and Long Island. Social media posts show cars sitting in floodwaters that came to the tops of tires and people attempting to walk in knee-deep water. In Upper Manhattan, witnesses Stephen Smith shot video of the flooding at an intersection next to a subway entrance. He says the flooding came suddenly and vehicles drove by with water up to their headlights. Tropical storm Elsa weakened as it passed over northern Florida on Wednesday, but was still strong enough to warrant a tropical storm warning as far away as New York. We all know the historical significance of the U.S. Constitution, but have you actually read it? The language of America's most famous document may seem a bit out of date in the 21st century, but what about its content? How does it relate to our lives today? NTD's Kay Rubicek has the story.
Let me start by talking about the American eagle.
Oh, yeah.
It has a left wing, it has a right wing. The left wing is the problem-solving wing. The right wing is, yeah, but can we afford it? As long as both sides are working, that eagle flies straight and it soars. The articles are like chapters in a book.
That's a document that's supposed to represent the whole nation. But how do you represent the whole nation?
It was genius. They used jealousy, and they spread power out horizontally and vertically. It's the failure part that people don't like. Actually, that's what drives us forward. Step away from I agree or I don't agree and just look at the principles involved. We're all born equal, but after that, all bets are off. You are the author of your own life.
The 4th of July, the Declaration of Independence. These go hand in hand with the US Constitution. But some say the Constitution is out of touch with our times, while others say it is what makes America America and what should protect America. Well, to get my constitutional facts straight, I took a tea time lesson from an expert.
They said, we do have all these diverse opinions and viewpoints and religions and et cetera. Can you really make it work? And the answer was a republic. A republic is representation that's put into place by the people they represent. In our free system, we can pursue our dreams, we can fall flat on our face. That risk helps us learn from our lessons and do better next time. We are the true authorities for our government. We tell our government what it can do. And every single minority who feels excluded from that has a representative. And that's the key to this system. And if that connection to the representative isn't strong enough, the individual needs to go make it strong. Let me start by talking about the American eagle, okay?
Oh, yes.
It has a left wing, it has a right wing. The left wing is the problem-solving wing.
Oh.
That's what the liberal side of our political system does. We have a problem, we gotta fix it. That's the left wing. The right wing is, yeah, but can we afford it? Do we have the resources? Can we protect the eagle from overabundance?
Tune in to Life and Times every week on NTD Television.
New York City has taken a break from its influx of tourists as the result of the pandemic, but those days are coming to an end. The city's mayor, Bill de Blasio, announced a $30 million advertisement campaign to lure tourists back. Over 9.5 million COVID-19 vaccines have been administered, which the mayor said is a milestone in the vaccination effort. The advertising campaign launched 2 weeks ago and will mainly consist of television ads. The city's efforts to attract tourists had been increasingly successful through 2019, with an all-time high of 66 million visitors. Still to come, the California governor expands the drought emergency to include more counties. He says it will make it easier for the counties to receive help during the historic drought. Know anyone who adopted a pet during the pandemic? One business is booming now because of that. Find out more here on NTD News.
If you're like most of us, you're probably getting fed up with the nonsense that's going on in the banking system. Did you know that top U.S. banks have recently amended their depositor terms and conditions to include the words bank failure and what's required of you in 24 hours if, or should I say when, it happens? Don't get blindsided by your bank. Call GSI Exchange today to pick up your complimentary copy of the Bank Failure Survival Guide at 866-424-2382. We'll also send you the required format to file with your bank within 24 hours of their failure, which is now required by the top banks to avoid freezing of your funds. Yes, the top banks can now freeze your money. The world is in a strange place, and banks are constantly changing the rules. So stay on top of the current events that really matter by calling GSI Exchange and requesting your free guide at 866-424-2382.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
That's why I invented MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow, and to thank you for your support, I'm going to pass the savings directly on to you. For example, you get my 6-piece towel sets, regular $109.99, now only $44.98, or MyPillow dog beds for as low as $19.99 with your promo code.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit MyPillow.com.
Body camera video out of Kentucky of Louisville Metro Police rescuing a 6-year-old girl after she was kidnapped last week. The suspect has no relation to the child. Authorities say he admitted to taking the girl after he saw her playing outside. He said that as she cried, he realized what he was doing was wrong and took her back. Witnesses had apparently already called police, who rescued the little girl. The suspect pleaded not guilty to kidnapping a minor. His bond was set at $1 million. The ancient art of boxing is still going strong in some communities today. It's not just for the Olympics and pay-per-view matches, but makes for a healthy and disciplined lifestyle. NTD's David Lamb met with several boxing enthusiasts to learn more.
Boxing could be a great form of exercise, but some go to the gym and see it more than just fitness, but as a form of lifestyle and discipline.
You know, I wake up in the morning, it forces me to eat better, forces me to just be more mindful, I guess. Yeah. And I don't know, I just fall in love with it every day.
Boxing is not just throwing your hands at somebody, it's an incredible art. And to do that art, you have to take time, it takes patience, you have to have a good trainer, which of course I am.
Tom Espinosa and his wife first opened their gym in Mountain View, California in 2004. They wanted to keep the sport alive. They say nearly all of their equipment was donated from the community. People join his gym to learn self-defense, but Espinosa tells NTD,
A lot of guys who know how to box will walk away from a fight. Will walk away. The guy can yell at him, flipping him off, everything. All right, if that's the way you feel. I'm not getting mad, not getting anything.
And new faces have been showing up after the pandemic, and they learn fast.
When you get knocked down, you get back up. That's one thing. That's like the number one thing. Same thing as rounds. You get 8 to 12 rounds in a boxing fight, and then that's like same thing as life. You get every day, every month, every hour is different. You know, like you go in one round, you could lose one round, come back, you could win the whole thing. They call it the sweet science, and I believe that 100%.
Old school boxing gyms and Rocky movies have accelerated the culture of boxing. One trainee says enduring is part of the sport.
Once you get hit, you're either gonna like it or you're gonna hate it. But you gotta just stick in there and just gotta be like, I still want more.
Another young trainee is currently boxing as a hobby, but hopes to get into amateur boxing one day.
Get in shape, learn self-defense, and well, I just fall in love with the sport, and it's hard, but it's good that it's hard because it's like you work on something every day, so it's just fun to me.
If you're not passionate about it, it's hard to compete with people who are passionate.
Nguyen, who founded Expert Boxing in 2008, tells NTD there are a lot of things that are non-stimulating and boring, such as conditioning. Despite hard days, consistency is needed.
You're going to feel like crap. You're going to get hit by every opponent until you shed your old style and metamorphosize into the next style.
Even with the prevalence of online coaches and YouTube videos, both Nguyen and Espinosa say it's not the same as a good old-fashioned trip to the gym. David Lam, NTD News, California.
Americans hoping to travel out of the country will have to wait several months if they need a passport. The State Department says if you're applying for a new passport or renewing one, you could wait up to 18 weeks to get it done. You can cut the wait to 12 weeks if you pay extra for expedited processing. Officials blame the longer wait on increased demand, a shortage of appointments, and delays with the U.S. Postal Service. That means you need to apply now if you have international travel plans in late fall or early next spring. A lot of people adopted pets last year when they were working from home, but what happens now when they're returning to work and taking vacations again? Who's going to take care of the dog? NTD's Phil Zhou has the story.
Summer is here and people are traveling. But what does that mean for the pandemic puppies that were adopted last year? Most are staying at puppy daycare.
I've seen people traveling and boarding their dogs, which last year wasn't happening. Now this year, everybody's eager to travel and they're leaving their dogs.
Nelson Lorero owns Puppy Loft Daycare in Chelsea, New York. Business was down 70% during the pandemic.
Thank God it's coming back up. Slowly but surely. It's coming back. More and more dogs every day.
Dogtopia of Stamford, Connecticut opened last year in the middle of the pandemic.
It's been a slow rise.
After toughing it out, business started booming since May of this year.
Because people are now getting out. They're taking vacations. They're going away for the weekend. So our weekend boarding numbers have gone up by 300%.
Even with the labor shortage, Jones was able to hire 10 new workers in the past month.
Everybody wants to work with animals. Who doesn't want to spend their day working with dogs?
But with business picking up again, both owners did have concerns for their furry friends.
When people are no longer at home, it's going to have a psychological impact on the dogs.
A lot of people got dogs during the pandemic, and not all of them are keeping them. So they're returning the dogs to the shelters, and that's bad.
Both are hoping business returns to normal by the end of the year. Phil Zhou, NTD News.
Up next, fishermen in the Philippines are struggling. China's Coast Guard presence in the South China Sea is growing and often tries to scare off other nations' fishermen. And extreme weather conditions continue in many parts of China. The sky suddenly turned dark early Thursday afternoon in Shanghai. Stay tuned for more here on NTD News. The Biden administration added 14 Chinese companies and other entities to its economic blacklist. That's to counter the company's alleged human rights abuses and high-tech surveillance in Xinjiang. Here's more.
14 Chinese companies were added to U.S. economic blacklist on Friday. The U.S. Commerce Department said it's because they had been implicated in human rights violations as part of Beijing's campaign in the far west Xinjiang region. That involves repression, mass detention, and high-tech surveillance against the Uyghur Muslim minority group in the region. Beijing denies the alleged abuses. The targeted firms include several information technology groups and security companies in China. They are among 34 entities being added to the list from various countries around the world. But Beijing hit back on Friday, saying it will take all necessary measures to protect its firms. The action follows Washington's decision last month to add several Chinese entities to the blacklist over allegations of forced labor in Xinjiang. Entities added to the economic blacklist will be required to apply for licenses and face tough trade scrutiny. China dismisses accusations of genocide and forced labor in Xinjiang.
Fishermen in the Philippines are at the mercy of China's Coast Guard. They say they're struggling to maintain their livelihood in the South China Sea because of conflict between them, even after a landmark court ruling denied China's territory claims. Here are the details.
This is the Scarborough Shoal, a rocky outcrop about 120 miles from the Philippines. On July 12, 2016, the Permanent Court of Arbitration in the Netherlands ruled against the Chinese territory claim. It invalidated Beijing's so-called nine-dashed line, which claims ownership of much of the South China Sea, including the Scarborough Shoal. But 5 years later, fishermen in the Philippines still can't fish freely. That's because of the Chinese Coast Guard presence there.
We get scared. Sometimes we get chased by rubber boats and are driven far away. Many others who have been harassed have also been shot at by water cannons.
Beijing rejected the court's ruling. After winning the case, the Philippines made little pushback against Beijing. The country's president has been criticized for closeness with the Chinese regime and a lack of action on addressing the issue. A local fisherman explained the Chinese regime's incursion in the Scarborough Shoal has dealt a major blow to locals' livelihoods.
Back when China hadn't interfered, it wouldn't even take a week to catch about 4 to 5 tons of fish. Now it's just a few tubs of fish, sometimes even just some buckets worth.
Fishermen around the Scarborough Shoal say they're hoping the Philippines will be more steadfast in reclaiming the area. The South China Sea is rich in resources. A third of the world's maritime traffic passes through it. The Chinese regime considers most of those waters its territory, while the Philippines, Malaysia, Taiwan, and other places also lay claim to parts of the region.
EU lawmakers are calling for a diplomatic boycott of the 2022 Beijing Olympics. They're urging EU officials not to visit Beijing for the Games. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more on the story.
The European Parliament passed a resolution on Thursday calling for a diplomatic boycott of the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics. And it also calls on lawmakers to sanction Hong Kong officials. The resolution is in response to the closure of Hong Kong's pro-democracy newspaper Apple Daily and what lawmakers call the dismantling of the free society in Hong Kong. The resolution passed overwhelmingly, but it will not be binding. According to the South China Morning Post, the resolution urges the EU to slap targeted sanctions on Hong Kong officials, including Chief Executive Carrie Lam, among others. It also calls for targeted sanctions on Chinese officials responsible for undermining Hong Kong's freedoms. For example, the resolution names the director of the CCP's Hong Kong and Macau office and the head of the National Security Office. Heavy rains have been drenching South China and parts of North China since Wednesday. In Shanghai, the sky suddenly turned dark early Thursday afternoon, and heavy rains poured down on the financial hub. A local resident recorded how quickly the clouds moved in the sky. The video on social media shocked many. When residents looked out their windows, they couldn't make out most of the objects outside due to the rain. Drivers could hardly see the cars in front of them. In North China's Shijiazhuang City, local authorities issued 5 warnings in about 2 hours on Wednesday. They include warnings for thunder, lightning, strong winds, hail, and rainstorms. The rain reached over 2 inches in a few hours in parts of the city. The hashtag of the news made it onto the trending topics list on Chinese social media Weibo. The strong wind uprooted many trees, and the storms interrupted traffic in 5 tunnels and bridges. Residents posted on social media saying they had a power and water outage that lasted late into the night. Another resident said he hasn't seen this kind of rain in 2 decades. According to Chinese media, heavy rains have been drenching over 13 provinces and regions in China starting Thursday, and they will last until Friday morning.
Coming up, a hot air balloon crash in New Zealand injures 11 people. 9 walk away with bruises while 2 are seriously injured. Authorities say a problem struck during the balloon's landing. And members of the USA swim team are training for the Tokyo Olympics. They say they're not as focused on whether or not fans will be there, but rather the competition itself. Stay tuned to find out more.
It's just clear as day. The media, whether it's broadcast, cable, or print media, has become extremely biased. And I started looking online for alternative ways to get information. And I saw an ad for a free trial. And I looked at it and I said, Epoch Times. I mean, come on, this is end of days type of stuff. I mean, what are they going to be talking about here? And I said, well, it's a free trial. Let me dig in.
Is it giving me both sides? Is it giving me an objective point of view here? I have looked for opportunities to see where they might be biased, and I don't find it. It has given me a level of trust in media that I didn't think I'd ever get back. I love the Epoch Times because it has renewed my faith in the idea that a reliable, responsible, non-biased source of information is available. And I can say that I love it because of that.
Get ready, world, for a whole new way to invest. Introducing the Unicorn Hunters.
We are talking about a cultural and economic shift.
A savvy group of investors whose only job is to provide an unvarnished assessment of who they think can become the next unicorn.
I am in and I'm going to invest.
We all know why we're here. We're here to meet the next unicorn opportunity.
This could be a game changer for a lot of families.
Together with you, they're on the hunt for the next unicorn.
A hot air balloon crashed in a popular tourist town in the South Island of New Zealand today. 2 people were seriously injured, while 9 others suffered bruises.
11 people were injured after a hot air balloon crashed in a New Zealand town on Friday morning. The incident occurred in Arrowtown, a popular tourist destination in the country's South Island, according to police officials. Police said 2 were seriously harmed and were transported by helicopter to Dunedin Hospital on the eastern coast of the island. The other 9 suffered bruises. It was initially believed that the balloon had crashed into a house. Officials, however, later clarified that it landed in an empty farm where it was supposed to land. Jim Bolt, the mayor of the Queenstown Lakes District, had reportedly told local media that it wasn't an emergency landing, but that the landing itself went wrong. Emergency services are still responding to the incident.
The road to the future may not be a road at all, but more of an elevated track. That is, if the company USky Transport gets its way. Their idea for solving the problem of increasing traffic congestion is to take traffic off of the road altogether. USky's model is a network of futuristic, driverless high-speed pods that ride around cities suspended from a steel track. Last month, the company opened a more than 1,300-foot test line in the United Arab Emirates city of Sharjah. The test pods can carry up to 4 people in what is designed to feel like a first-class airline suite. The pods can currently go up to 93 miles per hour, but for safety reasons, they don't travel that fast along the test track. USky says a fully implemented citywide network could support 10,000 passengers per hour. The first system could start carrying passengers in 2024. Members of the USA swim team told reporters Thursday that they're not as focused on whether or not fans will be there, but rather the competition itself and pushing themselves further than they thought possible. NTD's Andrew Thomas reports.
American swimmers are getting ready for the Tokyo Olympics. The decision to ban fans from the venues will be a disappointment, but they say they're set to go and compete at full speed.
At the end of the day, once you dive in, it's about swimming fast and getting your hand to the wall.
They expressed their drive, motivation, and passion at a news conference Thursday. USA women's swim captain Simone Manuel told reporters that the games aren't about the fans, they're about the competition and representing the United States.
The weight of the meet is the Olympics. It's not really about the fans being there, so we're just going to go in and swim fast as we can for Team USA and ourselves.
USA men's swim captain Ryan Murphy said the team was solely focused on competing and were preparing themselves for the sport's 37 events.
We've now waited an extra year to go to the Olympics. I think everyone's sitting in the room next to us, they're eating breakfast right now. We're about as fired up as you can be to get out there and compete, so we're really ready to go.
5-time Olympic gold medalist Katie Ledecky emphasized to reporters that these Olympics were about the world coming together and watching these elite athletes go for gold after years of preparation and training.
I think it is a really beautiful thing that we get to go to Tokyo and race against the world's best.
The Tokyo Olympics will run from July 23rd through August 8th. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
On this episode of Strong Mind and Body, we show you how to shop for foods low in pesticides, additives, and preservatives. Let's take a look.
Welcome to Strong Mind and Body. I'm Gina Marie. There's no doubt that a grocery store is a wonderful place. There's thousands of products and ingredients at your fingertips. However, that choice can be overwhelming. In the 1970s, shoppers chose from 9,000 products, but shoppers today choose from over 47,000. Selecting food that is clean and healthy can be daunting. We've put together 7 tips for cleaner grocery shopping. We are defining clean here as products devoid of pesticides, additives, and preservatives. Number 1 rule of thumb is buy from the perimeter. Most stores line the walls with the simplest of products, including produce, the butcher, the bakery, and of course dairy. So aisles in the middle contain most of the processed foods that generally have additives and preservatives, so you are better to avoid the middle aisles. Number 2, buy local. First and foremost, buy local. This can be anything from the weekly farmers market to a local bakery to local ingredients sourced by your grocery store. Smaller businesses are more likely to use safer practices when cultivating their goods. Number 3, buy organic. Purchase organic food when possible, as it's grown without pesticides and synthetic fertilizers. Particularly pay attention to the environmental working group's Dirty Dozen. This is the produce with the most pesticide residue. This year's list includes strawberries, spinach, kale, nectarines, apples, grapes, peaches, cherries, pears, tomatoes, celery, and potatoes. Number 4, consider frozen. Frozen foods can get a bit of a bad reputation, but many companies have stepped up their game and you can find a variety of nutritious options in the frozen section. Number 5, stick to whole ingredients. An easy way to eat cleanly is to eat simply. Shopping the perimeter of the store will already introduce you to many unprocessed foods, but the interior aisles have options too, including flour, nuts, dried fruits, beans, and rice are all examples of whole foods. Number 6, go in with a list. Studies have shown that entering the store with a set list of items to purchase reduces impulse purchases, most of which happen in the candy, cookies, and chips section. Number 7, reduce consumption of canned goods. While many canned goods, especially fruits and vegetables, don't contain many ingredients, they contain a harmful byproduct from their packaging, BPA. It's a plastic additive that mimics hormones and disrupts our biochemistry. The food we eat is a huge indicator of our health. Eating cleanly and simply and exposing your body to as few toxic pollutants as possible will benefit your well-being. Pick and choose what works for you and your budget, and know that every step toward eating cleanly is a step in the right direction.
Thanks for watching. My team and I are honored to be your source for the news. In New York City, I'm Kevin Hogan.
a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.